My name is Lily Geiser, and this podcast is for my Premodern Worlds project at Georgetown University. I was a huge geography nerd as a kid. I used to borrow the same 10 books about the countries of the world from the library over and over, even though I already knew everything in them. I memorized the name of every country in the world, not their locations or their culture or anything useful, just their names. My obsession culminated Christmas 2012, when my parents bought me a huge National Geographic Atlas of the world. I spent hours and hours looking at that thing. My favorite maps were at the very beginning, the ones that told you stats about all the different countries. What religion was most common, what the fertility rate was, where the biggest cities in the world were. But I also spent a lot of time looking at the pictures of the World Heritage Sites. My favorite was Ibiza, off the coast of Spain, because the water looked so blue. And I used to dream about visiting those different places when I was older. Maps have existed for as long as people have traveled. Most serve more practical purposes than for 12-year-olds to stare at. But some maps have always been meant just for looking at and wondering about the places they depict. The Catalan Atlas of 1375 is an elaborate piece of art depicting nearly the entirety of the European known world, which, importantly, includes much of northern Africa. We'll get into that more later. At once a Portolan chart, a utilitarian, highly accurate chart for Mediterranean navigators and sailors, crisscrossed with colorful room lines that map out cardinal directions, and a Mappa Mundi, a medieval map designed to help the well-educated and high-ranking make sense of their world. The Catalan Atlas is the love child of the two most popular map-making styles of the Middle Ages. Matthew Edney, the project director for the History of Cartography project at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, comments.
It is an incredibly misunderstood object. So on the one hand, you've got the world maps. On the other hand, you've got these sea charts. And then you've got the Catalan Atlas. So the Catalan Atlas, right, is made like a marine map, but it's trying to show the entire ecumen. It's much larger scope geographically than most Portolan charts.
Most likely commissioned for the King of France, Charles V, by the King of Aragon, the Catalan Atlas would have been too large and too lavish to have much practical use. The map itself is comprised of 12 parchment leaves, mounted on 6 wooden panels. Embossed with golden accents, the intricate illustrations scattered across the map are oriented towards the nearest edge. It could have, perhaps, been placed in the middle of the room, allowing observers to walk around the map and marvel at the faraway places it depicts. Perhaps one of the most striking and well-known illustrations from the Catalan Atlas is situated near the bottom of the second panel, in northwestern Africa. It shows an African king sitting atop a throat, feet bare and crossed. Holding a scepter and wearing a golden crown, symbols perhaps meant more for the map's European audience than representing his typical attire. He holds aloft a golden orb and looks almost passively at this mark of his enormous wealth. The caption just to the right, written in Catalan, tells us the identity of this powerful figure.
The Moorish ruler is named Mansa Musa, Lord of Guinea. This king is the richest and most distinguished ruler of this whole region on account of the great quantity of gold that is found in his lands.
Mansa Musa ruled over the kingdom of Mali from 1312 to 1337. Described by his contemporaries as full of opulence, manly virtues, and piety, Musa ruled over Mali during its height. Under his rule, Mali's international reputation and trade relationships flourished. Mansa Musa is best known, however, not for his accomplishments within his kingdom, but rather his journeys outside of it. As a devout Muslim, Musa had to make a pilgrimage, or Hajj, to Mecca, which he did in 1324. As a king, he had to do it in style. On his pilgrimage spanning much of northern Africa, Musa traveled with tens of thousands of people in a caravan which stretched all the way to the horizon, including, notably, 80 camels carrying hundreds of pounds of golden dust. Musa showered gold on the cities he traveled to, gaining him a reputation as a generous ruler and traveler. Alumari, an official in Cairo at the time of Musa's visit, described him in words that summed up the general impression of many.
When I went out to meet him, that is, on behalf of the mighty Sultan al-Malik al-Nasir, he did me extreme honor and treated me with the greatest courtesy. Then he forwarded to the royal treasury many loads of unworked native gold. He was noble and generous and performed many acts of charity and kindness.
Musa spent so much of his gold, in fact, that by the time he arrived at Mecca, he had spent it all, and had to take out a loan to return home, a loan which he repaid immediately upon returning to Mali, and at a steep rate of interest. Musa gave freely so much gold and paid any of his debts so quickly that he depressed the value of gold for years to come. It was the first and last time that one man directly influenced the price of gold worldwide. It may seem a little strange for a king to leave his kingdom for months on end to fend for itself. However, according to Malian legend, Mansa Musa was not even the first ruler to travel to faraway places. Musa himself legitimized his rule with the story of how the king before him vanished while embarking on an ill-fated expedition across the sea.
We belong to a house which hands on the kingship by inheritance. The king who was my predecessor did not believe that it was impossible to discover the furthest limit of the Atlantic Ocean, and wished vehemently to do so. He equipped 200 ships filled with the men, and the same number equipped with gold, water, and provisions enough to last them for years, and said to the man deputed to lead them, "Do not return until you reach the end of it, or your provisions and water give out." One ship returned, and we asked the captain what news they brought. He said, "The other ships went on ahead, but when they reached that place, they did not return, and no more was seen of them." But the Sultan disbelieved him. Then the Sultan got ready 2,000 ships. He left me to deputize for him and embarked on the Atlantic Ocean with his men. That was the last we saw of him and all those who were with him. And so I became king in my own right.
Although this story may be less fact than fiction, it does point to a precedent in Mali of well-traveled rulers pushing the bounds of their homeland. In a kingdom rapidly expanding as it became more and more prosperous, it is perhaps not surprising that the people of Mali valued a ruler who had first-hand knowledge of the outside world. And Mansa Musa was able to put his knowledge to good use. Under his stewardship, Mali reached its golden era, as it leveraged its reputation gained from his lavish pilgrimage to expand trade with the rest of the world. In large part due to Musa's pilgrimage, the Kingdom of Mali began to receive international recognition in a way it never had before. One of Africa's most famous cities, Timbuktu, thrived under his rule, becoming both a bustling trade center and a hub of Islamic scholarship under Musa's watch. The Kingdom of Mali became the stuff of legend. Tales of his immense wealth spread across the globe and filled the heads of European, Asian, and other African rulers with the fantasies of the golden lands of West Africa. To this day, Mansa Musa is considered by historians to be one of the wealthiest men of his time. In fact, he is regarded as perhaps one of the wealthiest men to ever live. Mansa Musa's inclusion on the Catalan Atlas cements his influential place in history and speaks to the vast influence his reign had on the entire world. On a map created by Jewish mapmakers from Europe, his proud posture and evident power and wealth truly speak to his mythical status. This map remains a record of the lens through which many viewed the world. How they imagined it, how they experienced it, the wonders they dreamed lay beyond the boundaries of their own adventures. Few, if any, who would have viewed this map would, in fact, have met Mansa Musa. But the legend of the man lived on well after his reign was over, and his amazing wealth and influence on world history remain forever recorded on the Catalan Atlas.